Hey there, welcome to your Punctibyte for the week of October the 15th. I hope you all had a great weekend. I traveled to, I know it sounds strange, I traveled to Nebraska for a ski camp. We go there because it's the closest place that we can get to low altitude. So it's a low altitude training camp for us, and it was amazing. It was absolutely incredible, and we just had such a good time. The athletes, really trained their butts off, and they were also just so much fun to be around. And we even did the Sexy Mind Club where we're discussing literature, academic literature that relates to skiing. So I was pretty jazzed. What's a hot body without a sexy mind, right? So it was a good weekend. I want to begin today with just a little bit about the Virtual Edge and the Facebook website that is sort of accompanying the idea of getting students to post their own pictures. And I think many of you liked it or became fans of the Facebook page when we made it. And it hasn't seen a ton of actions, but there has been a couple of students posting. And I just wanted to bring that up. Aaron Smith spent a lot of time posting this weekend. And I thought, this is eventually what I envision for the Virtual Edge Facebook site, is that students will take their own photographs and post links to their own photographs. And I thought, this is kind of where I see this going eventually. And I'd love to get your thoughts on it. And maybe, eventually the TAs will get into using Facebook to post reminders and things like that. So speaking of reminders, I really love the way that Sarah sent out an email reminding the students about their lab notebook check. And that might be a good idea for many of you to just drop them a line, maybe even a note just reminding them of their practical exam, and maybe also that their lab notebook check is going to be happening. That would be a really nice thing to do for your students, especially in this busy time when I know they're going into midterm week. So we will then, of course, be having the practical exam on Tuesday. And I think Elia and I, and Mara, we kind of got things set up on Friday. That is, we inoculated media. I know that Elia made a bunch of slides. I think Mara helped him. So we did the best we could to get set up there, but I will be actually setting up the practical exam tomorrow at about 10 after 3. And I'll be working on that until it's all set up. So if you're able to come, particularly if you have one of the morning lab sections, that'd be great. I know that there are many of you who cannot come at that time, and that's totally fine. That just happened to be when I was able to set it up. Now, if you're in the afternoon on Tuesday, it would be great if at least 1 or 2 people could come and help me at lunch. That's when I'll be changing the version. So if anybody is available, around lunchtime, give or take, that might be really, really helpful to get that second version set up. We'll be moving from the lab practical into lab 15, which is by far our most content-rich lab. That is the TA guidelines, and I know Bo was noticing this the other day. The TA guidelines are pretty overwhelming. They're just extensive, and they really go back and kind of take you through the basics of diagnostic microbiology, the different families of microorganisms, gram-positive and gram-negative groupings that are important to our discussion of unknown identification. And so this is definitely a lecture that I'm more than willing to give for you, but I still think it is a lecture that you should look at because it can be a great teaching experience or learning and teaching experience for you, because there's a lot here that will remind you and maybe reinvigorate your interest in diagnostics and in bacteriological identification, physiological and biochemical testing. A lot of great stuff on this. Going into the characteristics of staph and streps and enterococci, micrococci, and then the gram-negatives, of course, the Enterobacteriaceae and the Pseudomonads, and our major differentiating tests on that. So those are important things, and of course you'll want to be good at reminding the students about those really definitive tests like the catalase and the oxidase tests that help differentiate. So those are just good notes to remind, even if you decide you don't want to give that lecture on this coming Thursday. We'll also be inoculating plates for their throat swabs. So I'd really like them to get done doing their throat swabs first and then go on to their inoculations with, you know, things like strep pyogenes, because it just makes sense. They are going to be doing what I like to call the half-ass streak, which is on half of a plate, where they're going to start with the swab at the top and then pull down. That way they can streak both peoples on that one plate, and they'll be doing that with a lot of their plates. We'll talk about what the purpose of the streak stab is, but helping them out with that is really nice, because if they don't stab somewhere that they didn't streak, there won't be very much room for interpretation of those stab marks. So giving them the idea that you do want to, you know, of course, don't flame and then don't stab somewhere that you're planning to streak, so that it's easier to read for that streptolysin O in those stab regions. I think that kind of gives you the highlights of what will be going on in Lab 15, but I'm going to go ahead and pop over to the schedule so that we can kind of end things off, you know, maybe a little bit backwards today with that schedule, and looking at what is up and coming for the end of the week. We do have midterm lab grades due, and I know Mara was working on those last week, but they're actually due this Friday. So if you could get things updated, and let's go with this. Let's have everything entered into the lab book through practical exam 1, but not including lab 15. Pre-lab. So what I'd like everyone to do is to not enter their lab 15 pre-lab scores until I've emailed you back and I said I've submitted midterm grades. Remember that you do need to have a 0 entered for anybody who did not submit an assignment. So that way, you know, we'll see all students' grades summing out of the same total score. So I'm going to actually pull up eCompanion and see if we can get a sense of what we're going to be looking at. Now, I've left off this student's name, but I thought I'd go ahead and run through her grade, and you can kind of see what we've got up and coming. So essentially, we'll want to enter pre-lab scores, not including Lab 15, so up until Lab 15, not including Lab 15. And then we'll have the practical exam entered, which will add in that should add in another 30 points to the total. So we'll have, let's see, up through, lab 14. Well, of course that won't be there, but it'll be through lab 13. So that's entered for this student. And then adding in the 30 points for the practical exam as well. And that should give us our kind of midterm total for the students, and we'll get those lab grades entered in. So thank you guys so much for working on that and being on top of things, and you've just done a really great job with that all semester. So I couldn't do it without you, and it just makes my life possible, really possible at all. Okay, so I think the only other thing that's coming up here is that we're going to be going into unknowns here pretty soon, and I guess it's actually on lab 17, which means that we're going to need some help to try to get the unknowns all inoculated during this Friday during Open Lab. So if you're able to come during Open Lab to help with a kind of unknown inoculation party, that would be just wicked awesome and much, much, much appreciated. So let me know if you have any questions, or please, another thing on these, when I send out the weekly emails, if there's any information that you have for each other that would help everyone, then go ahead and just hit reply to all and let people know, you know, hey, don't forget about this. And that would be very helpful to me as well. So thank you so much, and have a fantastic week, and I can't wait to see you on Tuesday, or maybe Monday.